Well, good morning, folks. This is going to be a ripper, leading your best life. I'm actually with a legend of Perth business. I know he's very humble, but John Wood has a fantastic story to tell. And in fact, I worked with his son many, many years ago. And even in leading into this interview, I thought we were going to be talking to John Wood Jr., but I've actually got the man himself, John Wood Sr. John, thank you so much for agreeing to be on this Leading Your Best Life podcast.
Thank you for the kind invitation.
John, as I say, it's really just amazing that I think I met your son, John, goodness knows, it would have been in the 90s. And he's an incredible success story in his own right, as are you. In fact, I did work with Fleetwood Caravans only a few years ago. Again, it's I think it was more the mobile homes people out in Welshpool there somewhere. But John, let's go back and start with your story. Tell us the John Wood story, as much or as little as you'd like to tell, in terms of your life and your business. What's been your journey so far?
All right. I'll cut to the chase. I started Fleetwood on the driveway of my parents' home in Lathlane Park.
Wow.
On the 24th of February, 1964.
Wow.
I'd been in the caravan business for 5 months. Prior to that, I'd never been inside a caravan, never been on a holiday in a caravan, but I had just got back from travel. I'd started a delicatessen, was successful at that, sold the delicatessen, and decided I'd go on a trip around Australia, just gaining more experience. Anyway, I arrived back in Perth. I put an ad in the Western Australian, in the classified, saying I was looking for a job, and stated my experience. And I got a number of replies, one of which was from a company called Modern Caravans, who operated at that time on the Wanneroo Road at Chewett Hill, on the corner of Royal Street. Some of your listeners will know that location. It's no longer a caravan yard. Anyway, I went out, to cut a long story short, got the job. I was there for 5 months. I sold 44 caravans in those 5 months, and discovered that I'd only been put on for the Royal Show, but because I actually sold at the Royal Show, which they hadn't done previously, they wanted me to stay on. I realized after 5 months that there didn't appear to me to be a future there. They were primarily hirers. They really didn't understand what it takes to market and to develop an organization. And so I left, and I started on the driveway of my parents' home in Lathlane, and opened the classified ads. There was a little caravan for sale at a home, in one of the homes that had been built for the Empire Games Village. I paid £100 for it. Dad, who was unemployed at the time, I invited to join me. So we renovated that little caravan and sold it. And we sold it some weeks later. It took us a long time to renovate. Neither Dad nor I were handymen at all, but we made a lovely job of it. Sold it for £225.
Wow.
And I've got the receipt and all that. But we calculated very carefully that we earned 206 each per hour for our labour. so there obviously, we had a lot to learn. But that was the start. And there's one other little story that your listeners, I'm sure, will find of interest. About 5 caravans into our existence, we bought a shell, that is just a caravan with no inside, just with the exterior cladding. And we decided that we weren't good enough to do the manual work, so we decided to sell it. We advertised it. Anyway, 2 young men rolled up, about my age at that time. I was 22. and they were opening a car yard in Stirling Street. And I can't remember the name. I think it might have been called Motorama. Anyway, to cut a long story short, one of the guys was called John Hughes.
How
and,
about that?
and the other guy was a guy called Young, and I can't remember, but he was involved with young Holden on Albany Highway and Victoria Park. Anyway, they didn't buy it, but that was my first meeting with John Hughes. So anyway, we moved from there to a house that I was renting that had a big area and a shed. And very quickly we moved to 1964 Albany Highway in Maddington. And the rest, as they say, is history. We became the largest dealer in Western Australia, and we got into manufacture. And we got into parts and accessories. We even got into insurance. So we vertically integrated the company and expanded horizontally. So anyway, we achieved something that even General Motors didn't achieve. I remember reading some statistics on their market penetration in Australia, and they had a penetration of something around 60% at their peak. And we achieved 62% in market penetration. So every caravan that was registered in Western Australia at that time was purchased from Fleetwood. So,
wow.
Okay.
What a story. And then, as you say, at the time I was working with John and the sales team, you guys had, I remember John saying to me, 20% or more of vans at caravan parks were permanent on-site vans, from what I recall. Or you can tell me the number. And therefore, why have a caravan as a permanent on-site? Why not create something a little better than that? And that. So tell me about that particular move. Would you call that vertical integration, or would you call that horizontal when you started to move into that area?
Well, it would be vertical integration. We moved into manufacture. We acquired a little company called Sovereign, who built what we called park homes.
Yes.
And that too sort of has evolved. And bear in mind that after 27 years, I decided I'd leave Fleetwood. By then it was a public company. John was working in our park homes arena.
Yes.
But I was pretty good at business, but I didn't like it. Now
that's interesting. You were good at it, but you didn't like it. I think we need to explore that a little bit further. Let's just deal with that for a sec. You were good at it. I can tell already, attention to detail, the fact that you still remember the 206 pence or per hour. The fact that you remember those numbers, clearly you're quite numerically literate, or so somewhere in their numbers, something you're comfortable and confident with. But what you see, you were good at it, but you didn't like it. Tell me how that worked.
Well, my passion, the driving force, was to deliver the promise. Okay, delivering the promise was, in fact, it's an interesting little story. A lot of people think that's my sort of invention, that phrase. It isn't, because I took myself off to night school, to TAFE at the time, to study marketing, advertising, sales, public relations, etc. All those things that fall under the marketing umbrella. And I was fortunate to have a lecturer called Herb Endy. And yes, anyway, I don't know how it came out of one of his lectures that I was quite outspoken and vocal in. This whole notion of delivering the promise came up. And that simply is, when we hang out our shingle to do whatever we do, whether it's doing people's teeth, their toenails, or whatever, implicit is a promise that we make that will deliver our goods or services to that person. And so that was the mantra for Fleetwood. I bumped into a bloke you probably know or know of if you don't know him, but Barry Urquhart, who's
Of course, yes, I know Barry well. Yes,
he's
Barry. Yeah,
he's I'd say he's the most knowledgeable marketing guy I've ever been fortunate enough to meet.
mm-hmm.
So I invited him to come into Fleetwood to develop a strategic plan for the group and each of its divisions. By that time, we had a number, and that was a very grueling process. But out of it came this plan that Fleetwood continued to follow many years after I retired in 1990. That was 27 years I was there, and I decided to retire. And simply because, unfortunately for capitalism, there's a lot of people in business that don't shoot it straight.
Mm.
And I call that, because it's unfortunately a fact, and it's why the capitalism's got a bad name. Business, because it's an aspect of capitalism, has got a bad name. So I had stumbled across an approach by a fellow called Sydney Banks,
mm-hmm.
and he was talking about, and this is sort of we delve now into the spiritual realm. He was talking about universal mind, universal thought, and universal consciousness. And so I left Fleetwood and started to explore that world. And over a number of years and 33 visits to the North America, I had set up an organization at that time called the Philosophy of Everyday Living Centre. And we were working with the poor end of town. And we set up a centre in Midland, and which became very successful. And I think because of my background, certain business people saw its applicability to their organisations and approached us. So I got drawn back into the world of business. Because I was funding, this was a philanthropic undertaking, and I was funding it, and my wife tapped me on the shoulder one day and says, "Sweetheart, you know, I hope we live to a long age, but if the money you're pouring into this centre, we won't be able to afford it." So I started working with business people who could afford to pay and who did. And I think the organisations that we worked with over that time became increasingly successful, and some of them are still very good friends of mine after all that time. But in 2006, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I closed the centre and went on a pursuit of healing naturally, if I could, which saw me arriving in the Amazon jungle, doing a healing retreat.
Wow.
Which lasted 31 days. And I guess if I had have known how excruciating it would have been, I wouldn't have actually taken it on. But, you know, entrepreneurs, and I class myself as one,
Sure.
Do anything. They do crazy things. They have an idea and they follow it. You know, that's what entrepreneurialism is. It's just an idea and going for it. Anyway, it didn't cure my cancer, but during the process, I had this epiphany. I don't think I'm overstating it to say it was a real epiphany. And it was in the context of all the work I'd been doing since leaving Fleetwood. And I saw that at any moment in time, we're either in a state of possibility, or, which is fleeting, or we're in a state influenced by possibility, or we're in a state of impossibility. And of course, I think most of us live our lives a lot of the time in a state of impossibility. We see And this isn't about positive thinking. This is about a deeper reality that we can see. And I saw that so clearly that, and it's fleeting, our moments in that state of insight or epiphany or realization, they're limited. They can last for seconds, but they influence us so dramatically that our lives are transformed. So that's what I've been doing really since 1990, when I left Fleetwood. It was, hang on. I left Fleetwood in 1990, and it was 1992, after having been exposed to this understanding in a different form to the form that I'm working with, but it's the same thing. I started working from home. People sort of just appeared from nowhere, asking me to give them coaching. And that then morphed into this center, which we opened in 96. And then in 2006, I closed it when I was diagnosed with cancer. But the work hasn't stopped. It's just that into just sending to my editor my fourth book. It's called A World of Possibility. Reinventing, recreating the world in which we work, live and play. And here I am talking to you today.
Unbelievable. What a story, folks. So I assume somewhere along the line, the cancer at minimum's in remission, or something happened in the positive in dealing with that.
Yes. I tried to avoid surgery or radiation therapy, and I was introduced by a friend who is also a well-known Perth entrepreneur to a fellow that he'd seen in Sydney, and he said, listen, contact this guy. I contacted that guy. His name was Professor Stricker, and I went across and I had robotic surgery to remove the prostate. And whilst there are side effects to that, I'm healthy and living a very full life. It was 2012 that I had that operation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. And prostate, as you say, it seems to me, got at the right time. It seems very, very treatable. In fact, I've got a mate right now that I swim with that's about to go down that journey, and a whole range of others, which then, of course, sparked me to go and make sure I got my annual check as well, So
that's right.
So important.
I encourage all men to have the finger test, and the doctor can tell you whether your prostate's enlarged and whether you need to have it checked out or not. And that's as simple as that. And it's such a common treatable problem if you get it early enough.
Yes.
And of course, it's like breast cancer in women, but it's not as known as all the treatments that are available now for breast cancer.
Yes.
But there's also, it's very treatable. And like my friend, his name is Jim Leigh, who you may or may not have heard of Jim. He's a bit of a backroom person, but he was the guy that introduced me to Professor Stricker.
Fantastic. Well, straight away, I'm going to go to the book. As you say, the books. You are clearly a prolific writer, and with plenty of energy. And I'm just going to go here. The various books that you've got here are just fantastic. Possibility, a state of mind, the business of possibility, and you've got the living possibility. Just fantastic. Fantastic. So this latest one, the fourth book, just fantastic, John. So, and I've stopped you today from writing, or at least interfered for the short time we'll be talking today. But mate, just fantastic work that you're doing with your energy and your passion. But coming back to, it just goes to show, one of the points we make in these podcasts is conversations, whether it be chance meetings or non-chance meetings. And as you say, something Herb Endy had said to you And then you've got Sydney Banks as another one in terms of the spiritual realm. And then it got to the guy that was it Jim that then put you on in touch with
Jim
Professor Stricker.
Letus, Jim
Jim Leaders.
Letus,
These people,
Barry Urquhart.
Barry Urquhart. So
That's right.
these people, how people we meet. In fact, I think I remember there's a guy called Charlie Tremendous Jones said, you'll be the same person in 5 years as you are today, except for two things: the people you meet and the books you read.
Yes.
What are your comments to that?
Yes, well, positive to both of them. I'm lucky that I was born very open, and it's not that I don't discriminate. Oh no, it's not discriminate. I discern. I'm a non-racist person. I'm agnostic, but I'm not opposed to religion. I think if we're open, people come into our lives. Like you came into my life a week ago. I never met you. Here we are talking today. I'm learning from you. You're probing my experience, and other people may learn from our conversation. You're absolutely right. Conversation is so critical. I remember being in Herb's class, and there was another guy there called Warren Jones, who was Alan Bonzoff's cider, who organised the America's Cup campaign.
Of course.
Have you heard of Warren?
Oh, absolutely. He's a superstar. He was the right-hand man, the chief executive, and then all the other things within Bond Corp that Warren Jones in many ways was Alan Bond's right-hand man to get things done and work with people.
Well, Warren was also a student of Herb Endy.
Amazing.
And which I'm always reluctant to do. You can probably tell I've got a ponytail. How about that for approaching 83 and a ponytail? I mean, what a poser.
A rock star.
What a poser.
Do you play guitar as well? I hope you do, John.
I don't.
Okay.
No, I'm musically illiterate. When they were giving out gifts for music, because I aspired to own my own orchestra when I was 15.
Wow.
And I studied clarinet and saxophone, and I became very good technically. But I realized that I'd got in the wrong queue when they were giving out talent for music. I love music, but I could play by reading music sheets and all that, but I just didn't have that magic gift. Anyway, so there you go. You're learning a bit about my likes and dislikes.
Wow. Well, you know what? Just on that, I mean, these days, as you say, in terms of spirituality or universal consciousness, let's just talk about that for a second. The whole concept of tapping in and trusting your intuition, trusting. Now, at that point, had you been involved in any form of spirituality or consciousness at that point? Because clearly, that trusting of the gut instinct, and then even of where does the gut instinct come from? Were you aware of it at that point, or is that something you always had done? Give me your explanation there in terms of that gut instinct and universal consciousness, even in that situation with Alan Bond.
Okay. For whatever reason, as a little boy growing up in East Perth, when we lived on the wrong side of the tracks in a flat, as they were called in those days, I'd had this sort of interest in the esoteric. And as I grew older, it became stronger. And when I turned 34, I was deeply into the inside-out nature of the human experience, if you like. The inner world.
There's a note. The inside-out nature of the human experience. Wow.
Yes. And I can explore that with you if you want in a minute. But so I was an explorer. I mean, at 17, I thought I'd like to become, although Mum was Catholic and Dad was Presbyterian, at 17, I thought I might like to become a minister of the Presbyterian Church, although I'd never been inside one, and I was raised a Catholic. Now, don't ask me to explain that sort of. Ah, dear. So as you can see, I'm a bit of a weirdo, and but I've always had this interest. And when I turned 34, it intensified. And I did all manner of things, including going to India and exploring with a guru in India, something or other, you know. It was sort of, I was always had my skeptical hat on, I guess, always around religion, spirituality, etc., etc. But I was drawn to it. Anyway, one day I received in the mail an invitation to attend a program in Hawaii. It was called Management Through Understanding. I can remember it so clearly. This would have been 78, probably, maybe 79. Anyway, I signed up for it straight away without knowing anything about it. Anyway, when the time came, I can see you busily making notes.
Oh, I'm making notes so I don't forget it, because I'll refer back to management in Hawaii. Yes.
Yeah. Management Through Understanding. It was just a seminar of, they were using Hawaii as a base. They weren't located there, but it was a base. Anyway, for the seminar. Anyway, at the last minute, I couldn't go because of work commitments. Something was happening in Fleetwood. I can't remember what. So I rang the organizers and I said, look, I can't go. Are you having tapes made of it? And they said, yes, we are. And I says, well, how many tapes? And they says, well, we don't know. And I says, well, would there be 20 tapes? And they says, oh, probably not. So how much would each tape cost? And they says, well, we don't know. I says, well, what if I pay you $20 for 20 tapes and some postage, and I send this off to you? And they said, okay. So I sent that off to them and promptly forgot all about it, I might add. So sometime later, and I can't remember when, this big package arrived, wrapped in brown paper, and my secretary said, John, there's this big package has arrived for you. And I had no idea who it was from. And it was about the time where these bombings were going on, you know, letter bombs and all that.
Oh, yeah.
And she was nervous. And I said, look, I'll take it outside and I'll open it up. No, seriously.
So at least I'll get blown up, but you'll be okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I didn't make
the
any
chances
sense.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah. The chances were pretty slim. Anyway, I opened up and there were all these tapes from this program. Well, I started listening to them and they blew my mind. They were talking about 3 principles: universal mind, universal consciousness, universal thought. And okay, so I thought, God, I've got to follow this up. So very shortly after, I hopped on a plane and I headed to because I was now on their mailing list, right?
Yes, yes.
So I heard about this training that was being held in Tampa, Florida. So flew across there with one of our general managers and sat through this, and I was really moved by it. My general manager was totally unmoved.
Yes.
Thought this was all BS.
Yes.
But I was hooked. And so within a very short time, I resigned from Fleetwood and pursued my interest, and hence, you know, the Realm of Possibility project. But really setting up the centre and then getting sacked by Sydney Banks and being excommunicated from the group. But I've never lost my, well, is it faith or inspiration in the understanding? And I'll tell you an interesting thing. When I met Sid, he lived in Portland, Oregon, in California, and he hadn't sold a tape within the 6 months, and he wasn't living there. He had somebody selling for him 6 months prior to my arriving there. And of course, I couldn't believe this, you know, this amazing material. Anyway, gosh, what was the guy's name in Florida? it'll come to me. But he said, look, you know, contact this guy, George Pransky, Dr. George Pransky, who was a psychologist, a counseling clinical psychologist. And I went to do a program with him. I later got an internship there, and you know, I developed an incredible website and took Sid's work for the first time to the world. And how things go, you know, everybody is susceptible to their ego, and Sid's fame grew, and although what he wrote was the purest form of the understanding, he rang me one day and said, John, I want you to take everybody else's material off my website, off our website. It was called the Philosophy of Everyday Living website back then, because, you know, what they say isn't right. And I said, Sid, that's crazy stuff. I said, your stuff is available to people with a more advanced understanding. Okay, their stuff is introductory material, and it'll encourage people to take the next step. He says, no, I want you to take it down. And I said, well, I'm not prepared to do that. So he rang George Pransky and a guy called Dr. Roger Mills, who was a social psychologist. They were his two, you know, right-hand men. And they, George rang me and said, John, you've got to take it down. And I said, oh, that's crazy. I'm not taking it down. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I was excommunicated from the area, which proves that it's all just thought. You know, whatever we think is our reality. It proved my point. I had nothing but the highest respect and for life living gratitude for Sydney Banks and for George, who was my principal mentor and coach, along with some others. But I didn't succumb to that. And of course, it knocked all the work we were doing about taking this to the world, but it's taken off anyway.
Yes.
And it's now worldwide. But it's become, from the feedback I get, because I'm not interested in following what they do, it's become like a religious belief again. See, Jesus was a good guy, and what he had to say was great. And I think after Jesus, we tend to destroy the essence of his message. And whether he was the Son of God or not, I don't know. But that he was an amazing human being. That Sydney Banks was an amazing human being, and I'll be forever grateful for stumbling across his approach, because it's reflected in everything I say or do. But I'm just opposed to cults and religions that, you know, where the people don't walk the talk. You know, they go to church on Sunday and then act like horrible human beings for the rest of the week, because we justify things in our mind. So here you're seeing me, warts and all, this unplugged version of this human being you decided you wanted to interview. So you're getting is there anything else you want to know about?
Fascinating, John. It's absolutely fascinating, isn't it? Because, I mean, let's just take the Jesus thing as a great teacher, but of course people take the message. In fact, I was just on Facebook the other day talking about some of the history, of course, the Bible being written years after the death, written by a whole range of different people, supposedly, and then all the different changes that have gone on over the centuries.
Yes.
Everything from views on reincarnation, celibacy, the pontiff really only 100 or 200 years ago supposedly becoming infallible, and so they're all man-made. None of that stuff came from Jesus, as you say, as a teacher. And then the other interesting thing was, as you're talking about your GM going to Florida, your mind is being blown, and he's thinking, what a load of bullshit the hogwash.
Absolutely, sitting right near, hearing the
same thing. And it just reminds me of Jesus saying, you know, you throw out the seeds, some land on the soil, some land on the rock, some land on the sand, same seeds.
Yes.
And it just depends on how, as you say, either open or fertile, where the listener is at that point in time. And just like, I'm sure, whether it be book or movie, your books or any, we read it, you read it a year later or 2 years later, the Greeks have a saying, no one can step into the same river twice. Each time you step into the river, you're different, but the river is also different.
Absolutely. look, on that point, I remember getting a copy of Sid's first book. It was called, his second book was In Quest of the Pearl. The first book was Second Chance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I read it and honestly didn't make a lot of impact at all.
Mm-hmm.
I started being coached by George and others, and I decided, I better have another read of Sid's book. It blew my mind the second time.
Interesting.
I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to understand the profundity of what he was saying, what he was writing about. As simple as it was, I wasn't ready for it. And there you go. And the thing is, I am still a seeker. Look, I've had incredible experiences, epiphanies, and yet I want to stay open. I do not know the truth of anything. Okay.
Yeah.
I do not know the truth of anything. And I have a number of people that want to turn what I'm saying into the truth. They're missing the point. That the truth, if a truth exists beyond the known within our own minds, and you can call that our connection with universal mind or universal consciousness or whatever you like to call it, as long as we keep looking in that direction rather than start smoking our own dope, we're in with a chance. And I might be smoking my own dope as I'm talking to you. Only you will be the judge of that. I trust I'm not. I trust I'm being authentic. And because I'll repeat, I do not know anything.
Yes.
I've had experiences that have made sense to me, and I want to keep those experiences pure. I don't want to turn them into a belief system. I keep looking in that same direction every day.
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, over the last 4 or 5 years, I can't remember, one of my colleagues put me in touch with this guy called Sadhguru, one of the Indian yogics. And prior to that, one of my least favorite foods was Indian food. So I always had this bias against Indians. And the whole thing around when an Indian says it's not a problem and they shake their head, I go, what the hell? That doesn't look like it's not a problem. But listening to Sadhguru and again, getting into more meditation in the mornings and just to cope with COVID and life and so on. And all of a sudden, some of the things he talks about, particularly with that, and of course, since then I've read his books on karma, and he talks about inner world engineering and so on, which to a certain extent, even though I'd done a lot of work over the years in neuro-linguistic programming and having an understanding, there's an world.
Understanding what?
Well, neuro-linguistic programming.
Yes, and what
NLP,
else?
and understanding the inner world.
Yes.
Thoughts affect external, but I hadn't really delved down, or even more importantly, these days, now I'm doing Vedic meditation, the importance of bringing down your sympathetic nervous system to come from a point of calmness. Then the Japanese might call it Zen, we're not being triggered by every little thing. And then the whole, as Sadhguru talks about, the whole relationship with death. We had a mate of mine died of brain cancer last year, and we scattered his ashes. And I thought, well, it's profound. I'm sure you've gone through that experience in one way or another.
Yes.
And it's quite profound when you realize we're actually all going to end up in that bottle in one form or another.
Yes.
And so, but as Sadhguru says, and it's quite liberating to go, well, if you know that's where you're heading, then whatever time you have left, do your darndest with it to enjoy it. And you don't really have time for too much misery or unhappiness. And therefore, what do you do? And what are and again, Sadhguru talks about it, but it's not exclusive to him, as you say. Seekers have been discovering this information for 5, 10 or more thousand years.
Yes.
This one, as you say, thought. I'll go the other way. Thought, consciousness, and then universal consciousness.
Yes.
One of my other good friends, Greg Campbell, spent 30 years up with a guy called Paddy Rowe, an elder up around Broome. He's written a 700-page book called Total Reset, where he talks about the dreaming and that whole connection with, and Paddy Rowe would talk about sitting at the foot of everything, where the interconnection between us all And that, which is the point you've made. That's where we should be looking from. That,
Yes.
folks, there's this whole invisible connection, not only with human beings, but as you say, with universal consciousness, with universal vibration, and of course the Aboriginals say it's not just us connected. It's rocks, it's fish, it's trees, it's oxygen. We're all in this together.
Yes.
So, can you explain a little more about this? As you say, universal consciousness, universal
Yes.
mind, universal thought,
Yes.
and how that maybe impacts on you on a day-to-day basis even.
Okay. Well, I apologize.
It's okay.
Okay. First of all, I just want to let you know that I too studied NLP at one time way back, and I found it very, very helpful and in understanding, you know, how we function. So I'm going to suggest to you that this universal mind, guys picking me up, I won't be a sec.
No problems.
Hello, Frank. Frank, I'm just on the phone. Are you on your way? Oh, how would 12:30 work? Thank you. Thank you, Frank. Bye-bye. I'm so sorry for that.
No problems. That's okay. I can edit that part out. No problem. I'll wave my hands around so I know that that's going to be edited out. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there's this, I don't know what it is. There's this universal energy. I just call it energy. And I don't know if that's true either. But if you look around, the evidence is fairly compelling, right? But so one form this energy takes is thought with a capital T. So via our brain, it utilizes this as our thinking. Okay. So universal thought is our thinking. The degree to which we recognize that we think and that we're creating our reality moment to moment, just like me now and you now, is that universal consciousness. Okay, there's this consciousness that we can tap into. And then to the degree that we're aware, awake to the fact that we're creating our reality in this moment, is where our freedom lies. I mean, it's beyond the known, beyond our conditioned mind. See, what I've shared with you today comes from the conditioned mind, but it's inspired by possibility. And even at times, I've said things to you today that I have not said before.
Well, that's
right?
good.
Yeah, it's just, it's a different angle of the same thing, different take on the same ideas. And to the degree that I can do that and you know, be energized by the conversation that you've invited me to have with you, the more likely it is that I'll be inspired by possibility rather than dribbling out some spiel that I've learnt out of a book and have adopted as my guru.
Yes.
You see, it's the freedom. It's every guru that I've been told about, because I haven't read a lot, but they're all saying the same thing. Like Jesus said, right? And I'm not a Christian. The kingdom of heaven is within. And And now I'm starting to sound like a preacher.
mm,
The kingdom of heaven is within.
mm, mm,
That's it.
mm,
That's it.
mm,
It's not out there. It's not in a book. It's not in the Bible. It's not in church. It's within each human being, and our connection with that, call it the divine if you like, is our freedom.
mm.
But I resist. Well, I don't even resist because it just doesn't figure on my radar, turning this into some other belief system.
Mm, mm.
Belief systems don't work. The only thing that works for us is our own seeing beyond our conditioned mind.
Mm,
That's
mm.
where we enter the realm of possibility. But the moment we come out of that realm, we're back in the realm of impossibility. But can we, from our condition, understand that?
And of course, we haven't been exposed to it. I mean, even in a podcast the other day, one of the guys was talking about this thing called the split experiment in terms of waves of atoms, and essentially going just by observing. That's called the observer effect. I think just by observing the atoms, you can actually influence where they go. I think there was a movie called What the Bleep or something like that a number of
Yes.
years ago.
Yes, that's right.
And I was having a conversation with a guy the other day. He's going, well, I'm not sure if some of my scientific friends kind of go, if you can't measure it in a laboratory, it doesn't exist. And I said, but you couldn't measure bacteria in a laboratory 400 years ago, but bacteria still existed. Just because you can't measure it today doesn't mean it doesn't exist, which again, Sadhguru said, just because we don't have the technology today, even though we think we're so advanced, it doesn't mean these things don't exist, not the least of which, as you say, is the power of thought. And again, these guys talk about the power of thought and how that actually shapes atoms and how that does shape energy. And of course, it sounds woo-woo to people, some people listening say, go hug some trees, you idiots.
Yes.
But whether you're talking Michael Jordan or great sports people, let's just take Ronaldo. She's my greatest strength is my mind, my belief in myself.
Yes.
And we see this time and time again in sports people. Kathy Freeman saying, I think it was 46.7 or thereabouts written on her mirror for the 1 or 2 years before she ran the 46.7 to win the gold medal at the Sydney Olympics. Well, that's got to be a fluke. Oh, no, there's something going on here, folks.
Yes.
Not the least of which is you as a seeker, as you say. I mean, one of the things I study and talk to high performers, the whole relationship, and you've talked about it here, and we actually use the word in our lifter, our local business, it's a LYFTA, Swedish word for to lift, to raise up. And we literally say, connecting you with your possibilities.
Yes.
It was came out of a brainstorming, but it's so important because people have a particular view of what's possible in their business or their life. And we actually get them sitting in a seat and we actually start to brainstorm other possibilities. And they go, my God, I hadn't thought of that possibility. The collective brain power, and I talk about the collective energy, the collective experience, focusing on a person's existing possibilities and exposing them to new possibilities, which in your continuum of at where on the possibility spectrum are you versus where are you on the impossibility spectrum? If we help people, because I know in my own case, I mean, I was going to ask you about your father because you said he was unemployed at the time of starting Fleetwood, your business. My mother, just for the in terms of ecosystem, we grew up in an environment of what was not possible. Well, we can't do that because the people across the road have money, but we don't have money. We've never had money. Money doesn't grow on trees. So when you grow up in an ecosystem which limits possibility, that's completely different than an ecosystem that says basically anything is possible.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know if anything's possible. Okay, I don't know. I'm just open to possibility.
I'm open to possibility. Yeah,
I'm open to possibility. And look, my dad was an illegal SP bookmaker. And
so all sorts of things are possible there. Yeah.
And he was one of the most moral men, although he lived a life breaking the law until it was legalized. He was a really straight shooter. But, according to the law, he was a criminal.
Yeah.
And so I was lucky to have Dad. and lucky to have mum. I mean, she was just one of the sweetest human beings one could ever have as a mum. Look, I want to, no, over to you. No, I've
No,
lost.
what was it? Well, that thought came to you for some reason. So let's just play with
Yeah.
that thought. I
Oh,
want to
dear.
what?
Yes. Look, let me reiterate. We have a state of mind beyond the known. Yeah. Like we've got this gift of thought that makes us human beings. It differentiates us from other animals. So we've got this gift of thought with which to think. Now they think, but they don't think. Other animals think, but not at the same level as us. They may even have a more highly developed level of consciousness than we do. I don't know. But the way they treat each other is a lot better than the way we humans treat each other. So I suspect they might. I mean, if you look at the world today, how humanity is treating humanity, I mean, it's worrying, it's distressing. So, you know, if I could sit down with Mr. Putin and spend time asking him questions about how he sees reality, you know, he's seeing it from this very rigid, very conditioned belief system. And true, that is the Russian history, where the Ukraine was part of Russia. But who cares? Who cares really whether it's part of Russia or it's not part of Russia? They're people getting on with their lives and living their lives. You see, this need to accumulate, you know, it's just another form of chasing the almighty buck and spending our life doing it and losing our humanity in the process.
Absolutely.
Is this making sense?
Absolutely. And of course, NLP says, you know, we all have our own models and maps of reality. So, you know, his model and map of reality comes from, well, mate, we lost, you know, 20 million or thereabouts in the Second World War, and we had this empire, and the Americans have come closer to my border. I've told them not to do it, and these are one of the consequences. Not only that, Ukraine is they say that one of the food bowls of Europe, so fertile is that soil there. So, and I think the other side of it is, here's this guy who literally started as KGB and is now one of the wealthiest people in the world. And how did he do it? They say he gets a clip of everything that goes on in government, everything that goes in and out of Russia. So you control the airports, control. And of course, the problem is Donald Trump says, wow, if he's done it, why can't I try the same thing? So his map of reality is built all around that. And as NLP says, people act from a point of good intention. In their mind, at that point in time, they actually believe they're doing the right thing
Absolutely.
by the Russian people,
Yes.
and of course by themselves and all of their mates as well.
Could I take up that point?
Yes.
You see, within the work that we do, there's this concept of innocence. You touched on it. Everybody does the best they can see to do at any moment in time. If they could see better, they would do better. So therefore, you know, I think what Putin is doing is unbelievably cruel, destructive. You could use the word evil. Okay, you could use the word evil, but he's doing the best he can see to do. If he could see to do better, he wouldn't be doing that. So in that sense, he is innocent. And the concept of seeing people's innocence is critical to our well-being. You know, we don't have to agree or disagree with anything. We just have to see the person's innocence. Look, I'm doing the best I can see to do in my conversation with you today. Might I see better in an hour, a day, a week, a month, a year? I don't know. But I know that if we see into the realm of possibility, we see life from kindness, from understanding, from wisdom, and common sense.
mm,
Now,
mm,
people may question my common sense.
mm.
They may even question my wisdom. They cannot, and they might even question my understanding. They cannot question my kindness. That's, the other, I use the word kindness because love has so many connotations, but
Sure.
love is the real word. Kindness is the word that I use so I don't affront people who have all different views of the word love. But and the understanding that I have is that my reality, I'm creating it. I'm creating it from what I've seen, and I've seen beyond my conditioned mind. Have I seen far enough, clear enough? Who knows? I don't care. But but I'm seeing it from a state of love, of understanding, wisdom, and common sense. And for a guy fast approaching 83, I'm still kicking goals and making a contribution, and a positive contribution. If we could do that, if we could make a positive contribution every day, boy, what a different world we'd have.
Beautiful, mate. As you say, still kicking goals and making a contribution at 83. You and Mick Jagger are roughly around the same, and your hair's longer than his, so that's impressive as well.
And I'm better looking than him.
Yeah, exactly. But he can play guitar.
He can play guitar,
yeah.
and he's worth so much more money than me. And if I had his money, I'd be spending it on promoting the realm of possibility. That's what I'd spend. That's what we spend, a lot of our capital on. And bear in mind, I walked away from Fleetwood in 1990, and I wasn't a very wealthy man when I left. We'd gone through some hard times, but I've been successful in my investments, which are all driven by the same understanding that we are able to put food on the table and to do some good things for other
Fantastic.
people.
And clearly you've bred a wonderful family. I mean, John, your son, has been incredibly successful taking that foundation forward in terms of the national lifestyle villages around the place. I drove through the one down in Albany the other day. So I remember when John was starting all of this. So
yes.
I'm not 83, but what am I now, 60? I'm 67. But
just a boy.
A baby. I'm still that, but again, this is where this possibility beyond my conditioned mind. Let me ask you, John.
Yes.
I like to ask people this: the future. What do you see over the next 3, 4, 5 years in terms of your life and your mission over that time?
Well, what should I say? God permitting,
yes,
the
yes.
universe committing,
yes,
life permitting. I want to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to make more breakthroughs and reach more people and touch the souls of more people with this understanding, so they can in turn, they in turn can make a better world, create a better world. Look, the world will only change at one person at a time. You know that,
Yes.
I know that. It's just one person at a time. You create, this is you personally, me personally, we create the world we inhabit. Okay? Somehow I've created the world in which you're interviewing me. You've created the world in which you're interviewing me. So let's hope between us, we can touch other people that are listening to this and they haven't turned off thinking that this guy, John Wood's a screwball, to open their minds and open their, because I can tell, you have a very open mind. You're looking to the yet to be seen. You're still looking to the unknown. You haven't stopped looking, or maybe you have and you haven't revealed that to me.
No.
But it seems like you are, you're still young.
Yes.
At heart.
Absolutely.
Young in mind.
Absolutely.
Young in attitude. Look, I've met people that are 20 that are older than me.
Yeah.
In their minds. They're just they've shut up shop, which is sad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's in the Tao, that Chinese book, it talks about, when you're green, you're growing and flexible, but when you're ripe, you're dying and you're easily breakable. So it is about staying green. In fact, I think
Green and growing.
stay green and
Yes.
growing. You're green and growing, or you're ripe and you're rot. We don't want that. So stay green and growing. John, there's been so much. You can see I've taken all these notes that I've got here. Everything from the importance of the strategic plan that Barry Urquhart did to you, really with that possibility mind way back at 22 years of age, making the 44 sales in the few months that you worked with that first employer, but having the courage, the balls, the innocence to put an ad in the paper to say, okay, I'm here. Here are my skills. Who wants me?
Yeah.
Like you turn the tables completely, rather than going to someone, please give me a job. You go, well, I mean, that thought alone is an unusual, out there, courageous thought. But of course, it changes the whole ball game. Now you have people competing for you at age 22, and the fact that you still remember you bought that first van for 100, sold it for 225. Not only did you go, we've made £125 profit. You then sat with your father and worked out your hourly rate, which was just incredible in terms of numerical literacy. The fact that you remember 62% penetration, and the fact that you went to night school. I was talking to a top sales performer just last week and was going through some of the characteristics. She says, I'm a self-development junkie. And I said, that is one of the criteria we want in high performance. As soon as someone says,
absolutely,
I don't need to learn more, I know it all, it's like, whoa, red flags go up. But here you are, 83, a self-development junkie, and wanting others to do the same, stay open as seekers. That very point you make around our mantra was deliver on the promise, and the word evolve came in there. You evolving, the business evolving, inspired by possibility, open to possibility, and the inside out nature of the human experience, mate, just beyond my conscious mind. There's so much born open. I think I was born open, you said. So kindness. So you can see all these fantastic things. Management through understanding in a way. So John, we've covered a lot. Is there anything I haven't asked you or a topic you'd like to cover off on before we go into the home straight?
Oh, yes. Look to a quietened mind and a softened heart, because that's where our transformation occurs.
Oh, boy. A quietened mind and a softened
heart.
Oh, boy. No, that's a lovely piece. That's a lovely piece right there.
Okay.
Quietened mind. So just on that, what do you do on a daily basis in any disciplined way or practices to quieten your mind and or soften your heart?
Well, it's a moment-to-moment level of consciousness. Even while you and I have been talking, I've been looking to quieten my mind and soften my heart, because I get excited and motivated and inspired, and I don't want to be seen as a talking head. I'd like to be seen as a person communicating heart to heart.
Beautiful. Heart to heart.
Yeah.
Well, there's a saying, I think I recall, when the heart speaks, the heart listens.
Yes.
When we speak from the heart, somehow there's a deeper level of connection, as you see, from speaking from the mind or just speaking with words, but speaking from the heart. John, we've certainly spoken from the heart. We've been talking for almost like an hour and a half here. I know we can talk for much longer. I do want to just one more time show people your website so that they can access your material, therealmofpossibility.org.au. All the details are there, folks. So please come and take a look at John's work, get involved, a not-for-profit project for the common good. John, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today, and let's stay in touch.
Yes.
it's quite beautiful what we've done here. And I think, as you say, the river will continue to flow. And in 3 months or 6 months or 12 months, we'll both be doing similar but different things. So let's re-tap in at that point too. Yeah.
Yes, that'd be lovely. And may I add you to my mailing list?
Please do. Please do. Please
Thank
do.
you. Thank
Thank you,
you,
John.
all right. Thank you, Leigh. Bye.
Thanks, mate.